All right, let's talk about one of the most ambitious, complicated, and, let's be honest, self-critical books in the history of economics, John Maynard Keynes's A Treatise on Money. This is a work he pretty much outgrew the second it hit the shelves, but it's also the book that laid the groundwork for a total revolution in how we think about the economy.
You don't have to take my word for it. Keynes himself said it best. He described writing this book as forcing his way through a confused jungle. He knew it was messy. He knew it was a raw, unfiltered record of his own brain trying to figure something massive out. This wasn't a neat and tidy theory. It was an intellectual brawl.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the author himself saw all its flaws, why are we still talking about it today? How could this flawed masterpiece be so darn important? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
To really get this book, you first have to appreciate the sheer size of the problem Keynes was trying to solve. I mean, this wasn't some minor academic debate. He was swinging for the fences, trying to solve the central economic mystery of his era.
Just think about it for a second. The money in your bank account seems stable, right? But its actual power to buy things is always shifting, always in flux. For Keynes, this wasn't just some interesting little quirk. It was the engine of pure chaos. It created these massive, euphoric booms, followed by catastrophic depressions that just wrecked people's lives. And he had to know why.
And check out the date, 1930. This is just 1 year after the Wall Street crash. The entire world is sliding headfirst into the Great Depression. So Keynes isn't just publishing some abstract theory here. He's dropping this massive 2-volume diagnosis right in the middle of a global economic meltdown. Talk about timing.
And getting this book out the door was a marathon, not a sprint. It was the end result of a long, incredibly difficult struggle that went on for the better part of a decade. You can see from this timeline just how much this project took on a life of its own. It starts in the mid-20s, it balloons in size, and then, even after he finishes a draft in 1929, he looks at it and decides it needs huge revisions. This thing was an absolute beast to write.
And the ambition here is just staggering. He split it into 2 huge volumes. The first one, the pure theory, was him trying to build a whole new way of thinking from the ground up. The second, the applied theory, was him using that new framework to explain the real world, investment, finance, the whole shebang. He wasn't just adding to a conversation, he was trying to build a whole new one.
Now, hidden inside all that complexity, inside that confused jungle, there was one truly revolutionary idea. It's the absolute heart of the treatise, and it's the key to everything, and it all boils down to 2 words we all know: savings and investment.
Okay, first, savings. Keynes kept this super simple. It's basically a passive act. You get your paycheck, and whatever part of it you decide not to spend on stuff, that's savings. It's a decision to hold back.
And then you have investment. For Keynes, this was a totally different animal. This is an active, forward-looking decision made by business owners to spend money creating new things, building a factory, buying new machines, developing new tech. It's all about creating the capacity to produce more in the future.
And right here is the fundamental disconnect that changed everything. For decades, most economists just kind of assume that savings automatically flows into investment. Keynes steps in and says, whoa, hold on a minute. These are 2 completely separate decisions made by totally different groups of people for totally different reasons. The family saving for a rainy day and the corporation building a new factory are not connected by some magical invisible wire.
And that was the breakthrough. It seems so simple now, but it was a radical idea. The amount people want to save isn't automatically, magically equal to the amount businesses want to invest. There can be a mismatch, a gap, and it's inside that gap that all the economic chaos is born.
So, what happens when they don't line up? Well, if businesses are investing more than people are saving, money is flooding into the economy. Keynes called the result windfall profits. Suddenly, there's a boom. But if people are saving more than businesses are investing, you get the opposite. Entrepreneurs are hit with windfall losses. Goods sit on shelves, and you get a bust. The entire business cycle, in his view, was driven by this simple mismatch.
But here's where the story gets really fascinating. Just as the world was trying to digest this massive, complicated work, its own author was already moving on. Keynes was, without a doubt, his own harshest critic.
I absolutely love this quote. It's just so brutally honest. He didn't see the book as some perfect finished statue. He saw it as a record of his journey.
and it was littered with the old ideas, the skins he had already shed along the way. He was constantly evolving, and this book was a snapshot of just one phase of that evolution.
In fact, get this, just 2 years after it was published, as the book is being translated into German and Japanese, he's already telling people, my thinking has already moved on quite a bit. He was using the treatise as a launching pad, but he was already blasting off toward his next, even more famous book, The General Theory.
And this little story is just incredible. I mean, can you imagine an author telling a publisher, hey, don't bother translating my big famous book, it's already obsolete. It shows a stunning lack of ego. He cared more about getting the ideas right than he did about defending his past work.
So if Keynes himself basically said, don't read this book, why do we still call it a masterpiece? Why does it matter? Because for all its flaws, the treatise was the necessary, monumental step that made the next revolution possible.
So here's the final takeaway. It matters because without it, we never would have gotten the general theory. It was the essential stepping stone. It's where he first hammered out that critical difference between savings and investment. It gave economists a whole new toolkit for understanding booms and busts. It started to shift economics away from thinking about a perfect, static equilibrium and towards seeing it as a messy, dynamic process. And maybe most of all, it gives us a rare, honest look at a genius wrestling with a problem that was almost too big to solve.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. The world today is obviously way different than it was in 1930. But those fundamental forces of saving, investment, and financial instability, they're still here. The puzzle that Keynes wrestled with in that brilliant, flawed, confused jungle of a book, well, in a lot of ways, it's still the central puzzle we're all trying to solve today.